CIT, Mental Health Association, piecing together support in a trauma-filled world. This is our third seminar in a series of 3. If you've missed the first 2, we'll give you the link in the chat box to tell you how to go back and watch any of those. My name is Vicki Phillips. I'm with the Mental Health Association in New Jersey, and it's my pleasure today to introduce Ed Dobelman. First, I'm going to talk a little bit. Everybody is on mute throughout the presentation. You will be able to post any questions that you have in the chat box, and we will hopefully get to those questions and be able to talk a little bit about resources towards the end of the program. First, I wanted to talk a little bit about what CIT is, for those of you who do not know. The Crisis Intervention Program is a community partnership of law enforcement, first responders, mental health and addiction professionals, individuals who live with mental illness and their families, and other advocates. CIT is a program that provides the foundation necessary to promote community and statewide solutions to assist individuals with mental illness and or addiction. And the CIT model reduces both stigma and the need for further involvement with the criminal justice system. Research has shown that communities that prescribe to the CIT model have higher success rates in resolving crisis situations. So with that, it's my pleasure to turn the program over to Ed Dobelman, who is our Director for CIT New Jersey. Ed, welcome.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you, Vicki. Thanks again to the Mental Health Association in New Jersey and all that we're doing here to collaborate on these 3 presentations. I don't want to hold up anybody's time, but if you ever need anything from CIT New Jersey, please look us up on our Facebook, email me, and I'll get right back to you. Again, if you're new to this, I'm just going to introduce you to our 2 presenters in the last 2 that have been with us for the last 2 presentations. Who I have met through CIT, through our CIT programs in different counties. It's Dan Farnworth, and he's a paramedic in the UK on the front lines. He's also the author of 999, My Life on the Front Line of the Ambulance Services. And with us on this side of the pond is Mike Soma. Mike's been involved in CIT and as a firefighter for 26 years, an instructor, an inspector, also part of our Hudson County Crisis Intervention team, and also a safety officer for the Meadowview Psychiatric Hospital in Secaucus now. So they've been with us for the last 2, and we've been talking about trauma and stuff like that. And we brought with us today our third backup, Roy Diaz from Cop to Cop, who will also be new today, and talking about his presentation and his program. So I don't want to collaborate and move on. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike and Dan. And again, thank you everyone for coming and attending.
Actually, I'm going to take a second and introduce Carolyn Quinn, who is our Wellness Center manager for Mental Health Association in Atlantic County, and she's actually our tech person today. So she's going to be monitoring the chat and sharing the screen for everyone to see the presentation. Thanks, Carolyn.
Happy to be here, and if there's anything anybody needs, I'm in the process of putting our last 2 webinars in the chat, so folks that missed them can go back and watch them, and please keep in contact with us.
So Dan, you're up. Welcome.
Sorry, hi. It kind of lost me there a little bit. Yeah, Mike was going to start off, but just to say hi, I'm Dan, as introduced from the UK, paramedic. I think today we're just delving a little bit deeper into resiliency, and I think Mike's heading up there with the first slide, so I'll hand over to Mike.
Yes. How are you? Thank you all for joining us today for the last program in the series. So we'll start off with the first slide so you can go to the next one. So we respond to stress in different ways, and we've talked about stress in the past too, and how over time it builds up. And this is a great stress curve that really shows you how we go through our career and we are exposed to situations, and over time, it might not bother us. And we kind of take it as it comes and we brush it off, and we start to build up a resilience, our own resilience to it. But over time, what I've seen as a peer support counselor is that responders, as they get later on in their career, it becomes harder and harder to deal with. And it's really important, again, talking about that toolbox of ways to relieve stress. And then you think about today with COVID-19 and what we as responders are dealing with, you know, the concern of our exposure, not only to ourselves and our own health, but that of our family, co-workers, especially now, depending on where everybody's from. So like in the state of New Jersey, things are opening up. People are starting to get back to that, you know, usual life of, you know, summer life of going down the shore. And although things are different with going out to restaurants, it's that we don't know necessarily what our coworkers are doing when they're not with us and what their exposure is. So to some responders, it's just an added stress. So it's definitely something that we have to talk about, deal with, and build up a resilience to. Again, I always say to everybody, what you choose to do as far as your own personal protective measures is what you choose to do. You have to do what you're comfortable with. So you really have to take this whole COVID-19 stress into account with just the regular calls that we go on day to day. You know, it's important. Next slide.
Yeah.
Oh, Dan, you there?
Sorry, yeah, sorry. Just a little bit of a storm kicking off here. It's just, it must be the story, the third in the series for some reason. Yeah, so, I mean, and the interesting thing we just wanted to mention really is that transfers across the UK pretty much word for word as Mike put it. It's resiliency and the way we cope with trauma really does just transfer across, and there's no better way of putting it what Mike has just said really. It does really transfer across to the UK. I think we're ready for the next slide. Is that right? I don't know if I'm a slide behind here, Carolyn. That's it. That's better.
But we're into the resilience crisis, the bouncing forward. So I think the biggest thing with bouncing forward for everybody is in the way we as responders, we go through our career. Ooh, did we lose everybody? What happened there? Just something closed out.
I am just trying to fix it. Folks are only seeing half the slide, so I apologize.
Oh, okay. So I'll just keep talking. We'll get to the whole slide at some point. The biggest here is bouncing forward. You have to remember, as first responders, as we go through our careers, we come into our positions, whether it be police, fire, EMS, and a new person has some type of event that they've been exposed to in their life. It could be something small. It could be a loved one who had, cancer or battled cancer. They lost them. Maybe somebody in the family died in a tragic accident, whatever it might be. And over time, they've kind of built up some type of resilience. And what we do is, as we get exposed over and over to different types of emergencies, we kind of build our own resiliency. What our coping mechanisms are. Again, always trying to stay away from the bad coping mechanisms, the alcohol, drug use, whatever it might be. There's a whole host of bad ones that we want to avoid. But the biggest thing to remember is that as we keep going forward, we want to just keep adding to it. Be mindful of it, of what our coping mechanisms are, keeping our loved ones involved in what we're doing. And when we have a bad day, we need to just take some time for ourselves to really be mindful of what's going on and how we're reacting to something. Again, this is not to say it's New Jersey. So I always get, I get people give me the sideways look. I'm not talking about, we're not going to go out and hug trees and we're not doing that whole thing, but we really need to just say, listen, I need some time. I just had a really bad day at work. We always want to insulate and protect our families, but just keep reinventing ourselves and reinventing the ways in which we cope and deal with our stress from the job.
Yeah, and I think I would probably add to that the key words that it said at the end, on the job. And what would you do if you was feeling stressed on the job? And that was a question that was posed to me. And I think, you know, if you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed whilst at work or whilst on the job, as it were, the first thing to realize is that feeling and acknowledging it is the first important thing, acknowledging that you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed. And I suppose the second thing is to know that it's okay to feel overwhelmed. It's okay to feel stressed. It's okay to be having this difficult time, because, you know, we all go through tough times at work. And like Mike says, there's lots of different reasons, the building blocks on the stress curve that can cause us to feel overwhelmed. And it's like recapping where we were a couple of weeks ago when we were saying that actually reaching out, once you've acknowledged it, reaching out and accepting that help and looking for the help. And, you know, every employee is different. I think we've established that in the previous episodes in the series, that some services have peer support, some services have employee assistance programs, some don't have much. But what every service does have is a colleague that you can confide in. We have support mechanisms in place with our friends, our family, and if not, we've always got our practitioner or doctor that we can turn to as well. And I think we just really want to emphasize that actually, if you do feel overwhelmed at work, there is always some form of help available.
There is, and we're going to get into a great one when we start talking about cop to cop.
Absolutely. I think one of the other questions that was posed with resiliency, Mike, was about the peer support and what's it been like during COVID, and has it been any different for yourselves?
Dealing with COVID and peer support, it has been, it's been a lot. You know, we're dealing with not only our regular emergencies and peer support counselors going out throughout the state and dealing with departments that need it for other issues. And then the calls that we're getting, I think we were getting more at the beginning of COVID. We actually had two phases of our response. The first one being right at the beginning of this, because again, being a novel virus, nobody really understood anything, nobody knew anything. And it was all of the information that was coming out and the exposure to our families. And, you know, I didn't want to take it home to my spouse. And this, you know, this guy was afraid because his department didn't have proper equipment available. And this, you know, it was a whole different host of dealing with people's anxieties to the unknown. Really, that's what it comes down to. We didn't know anything about it. We didn't even know how we were going to respond to things. I mean, essentially, this is what it came down to. It was kind of like, here, go. You know, it was really difficult on that aspect. But then as we started working our way through dealing with the emergency, getting information from the CDC, getting it from the World Health Organization, getting it from scientists and doctors that are out there, what the government was giving us, it was kind of helping us wrap our head around it. The biggest thing I always say, and this plays out across the board. This plays out for responders who might go to something that is very much newsworthy, is limit the amount of media intake. I don't know how much I can emphasize that. It has become the amount of information that we're getting with COVID-19 and how many different people are saying different things and the way news media spins things, and it becomes overwhelming. And then you think back to any type of emergency response that you've had where, you know, the news media takes it and they spin it. I'll use an example of everybody who's seen the story with FDNY, with them removing somebody from a fire. We have the news media is Monday morning quarterbacking things. It's in the media, it's in the news cycle, and we're getting upset about it. We're almost making it worse on ourselves. It's like we're impacting ourselves more than we have to because we keep watching it over and over and over. So definitely watch the media intake. But dealing with EMS response and their overwhelming response to COVID-19, dealing with their stresses as far as being exposed and then having to go home. Thankfully, in the state of New Jersey, especially in the Hudson County area, we had some great companies step up to take care of housing for EMTs who were just too fearful of exposing their families to it, which was one of the biggest fears that people had.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that, Mike, because we've been having exactly the same conversations over here in the UK about media input. And like you say, bad news sells. And of course, COVID is really a bad news, scary thing. But you cannot overwhelm yourself with media intake, which is a very, very good point. I would absolutely agree. Ready for the next slide, I think, Caroline. Lovely. So we were just talking about resiliency, and when resiliency comes up in the UK and we do presentations about it, this is the one question I always ask at the beginning of it. So I think, when you look at resiliency, there's many definitions of it. But for me, it always starts with yourself. And the first question I always ask at these events is, what are the qualities of your closest friends? What are them qualities? What part of them qualities make you cherish them friends? And we sit down and we have people working groups, and we come up with all sorts of answers about the qualities that we look at in our very, very closest friends. And these are sometimes words. Accepting, that always comes out. Non-judgmental, that always comes out as a key feature. Loyal and respectful. But just take a minute and think, your closest friends, what makes you cherish them? And all of these really interesting features come up, and we love our friends for that. But the question I ask people is, when was the last time you showed these qualities to yourself? And actually, when you ask this question a lot, you can see the penny drop in a lot of people. We need to be more accepting towards ourselves. We need to be non-judgmental towards ourselves. Show yourself the same qualities that you want and need from your friends. And actually that works. If you're going through a tough time and you start being, you focus on bad things that are happening. And if you start being more accepting, and if your friend did something and you would accept, you would support them, you would let them know that it's okay to have made a mistake, for example. But sometimes you would hound yourself and really be critical about yourself. So start showing the features and the qualities that you're showing your friends. I'm sure you do some exercises similar to this over there, do you, Mike?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the biggest thing is self-care. I remember even a TV ad, and they were talking about self-care with COVID-19. And I think one of the biggest things with COVID going on is the access to some of the apps, or even the commercials for the mindfulness apps that are available on the phone or tablet. But taking care of yourself, just taking a minute for yourself, taking that time. And I think what Dan said was absolutely perfect, is, we look at what we're looking for out of our friends, and their understanding and their empathy and it's that whole, we need to be that way with ourselves and not be so hard on ourselves when we're having a problem, after a call, after something happens. Don't be hard on yourself, and definitely I think that's where the whole resilience buildup is practicing a way, or learning a way, or recognizing the ways in which we can take time for ourselves. And, everybody can, in your mind, just think to yourself, if I need to take a break, what do I do that I find relaxing? Is it listening to music? Is it playing music? Is it taking a drive down, the highway, down if you're in New Jersey, down to the Jersey Shore? If you're in California, driving up the coast. Just think of those ways. And it's really important to get behind understanding and planning for them now, ahead of time. We talked about the toolbox, getting those, find out what peer support programs are around, find peer programs within your organization, or reach out to, your EAP, your employee assistance program beforehand. These are all things that knowing beforehand make it easier. And it works the same way with our own resilience. Paying attention to when things are bad, when things are rough, how can I do something to de-stress? If you start thinking about it in your own mind ahead of time, it becomes so much easier when it hits the fan and you have to do something to help yourself. Going back to exactly what Dan said, we really have to pay attention to our own needs.
That's right, yeah. And of course, as you can see on the screen, Mike talks about having that toolbox. And, the toolbox of resiliency can have many things in it. And I suppose it's kind of an individual thing as well. Your toolbox, it can be individual to you, but we need certain building blocks within that as well. And as you can see on the screen, being kind to yourself is such an important feature. Taking notice of your thoughts and feelings. And the most important part of that is not suppressing the uncomfortable ones. Because if we do that, we build up and build up and build up, and we don't want that. And also social support, that's critical. And it's like we say, it's like we're talking about peer support programs and having all this equipment within your toolbox. So if we ever need support, where can we turn? What can we do? And knowing where to turn, I think it is key as well. And, you can build your toolbox from there on in. And the resilience courses that go on are quite in depth, and they help you actually to build them up. And it's maybe too much to go into in the hour that we've got tonight. But you do get the idea from just that one slide of where you can start to build your resiliency toolbox, as I like to call it.
Dan and Mike, there's an interesting comment in the box about suffering, a lot of people suffering from guilt when they try and take care of themselves. It's hard for people who are responders and taking care of others to not feel guilty when they take time for themselves.
Guilt is a big one. That's it's hard, but it's much needed, especially when you're a responder and a caregiver. Or if you have, even if you're not a caregiver, but just your responsibilities at home, a lot of people, they very much put a lot of stress on themselves. And I know I'm guilty of doing it. I do it all the time. I get very stressed out, worry a lot about making all the, trying to tie all loose ends up. It becomes a little overwhelming sometimes. But you do need to recognize that you need to take a break for yourself. If you're not going to take care of yourself, if you're not going to pay attention to what those needs are, it's going to be so hard when the emergency happens that really really impacts us. It's going to be harder to recover from it. And ultimately what's going to wind up happening is someplace is going to lose. And I don't want to see our responders on that losing end. There's only so much stuff that you can stuff into a bag. At some point, the bag explodes. So you really, really need to start removing stuff out of that bag, little by little, addressing things that you can address, taking time, finding somebody to talk to, and they're going to help you just manage it. Sometimes it's amazing how just a general conversation, a matter of fact, everybody, thinks of peer support. It's not a magic wand. It's not a crystal ball. There's no hocus pocus behind it. It's just a conversation. It's maybe I had something happen in my life that maybe the way I coped with it, maybe with some way that I dealt with it can help you, or put it in a view that can help you shrink it down and maybe deal with it and move it away. That's kind of the importance of where peer support comes in.
Absolutely.
Another piece to the comment that Barb made in the chat also included the fact of being a parent and that added piece. So thinking about, before we let everyone in today, we were kind of, the six of us catching up, and there was even conversation about, children going back to school. And so thinking about some of us having to be teachers and get algebra figured out on top of being that first responder, on top of being that partner, that parent. So there's so many layers to it and so many areas for that guilt to come in. So that much more important during the time of COVID to be following what Mike and Dan, I think, are talking about.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely. It has been very, very difficult. And it's added to the difficulties in looking after your own resilience. But on the other side of the coin, trying to put a positive spin on things, I would say that sometimes when we've been working the way we've been working recently, we've actually had an opportunity to learn what's important to us and to do things that maybe would never have had the opportunity to do before. I mean, teaching my kids algebra, I mean, I didn't realise how bad at my times tables I was, you know. So it's you know, I think that's resilience. To bring it back to resilience, it's actually trying to look at the glass half full instead of half empty. Pessimist versus optimist. It's trying to be, you know, have that positive spin on things, because I mean, it is a really difficult time. But actually, you know, I've had to be a teacher to my children, but I've loved every minute of it. It's been stressful, don't get me wrong. I mean, at the time I didn't love it, but when I look back, I've loved every minute of it. And I'm sure, you know, pretty much every parent who's had the opportunity to do that would probably agree.
I do want to actually, Barbara just made a comment, and I wanted to make mention of it. She talked about being a caregiver and it's okay to say no. That is something that I am struggling with. That is one of my things that I need to do better with is realize that there are times when I can say, no, I can't. My phone rings. I get asked to do a lot of different either presentations or graphics for people or something. And could you do a flyer for this? Could you do a flyer for that? And sometimes I just have to just remind myself, it's okay to just say, no, I can't do it right now. I'm burning the candle at 15 different ends. And ultimately the only person I'm hurting is myself. By saying no, I'm not hurting them. I'm you know, by doing it, I'm hurting myself. So it's okay to say no. And it's one of the hardest things, I think, for us as first responders, especially, is that we're so used to being there for so many people, and we are the fixers. We are the people who, when it goes bad, we want to fix everything. We want to put the fire out. We want to get the person taken care of and make them feel like that there's somebody, and we're going to get them the best treatment we can get them and get them through whatever the emergency is. But at the same point, it's sometimes saying no is where we're going to take care of ourselves. So thanks, Barbara, for even mentioning it.
Mike, is there something that we should do ahead of time to kind of prepare before we know we're going into what might be a stressful situation?
If we know that we're going to be going into a stressful situation or something that's going on, I'll use what's going on in the U.S. right now. We have all of these protests and riots, and it's really, it really can be hard on first responders. I look at what's happening out in Washington, not in Washington, in Wisconsin last night. And, you think of those firefighters. Here they are, they have the city, 50 working fires throughout the city, and they have to deal with the protests and people throwing things at them as they're trying to protect the community and keep the fire from spreading. And it really is important that they take the breath, and breathing is one of the biggest things you can do, is taking that breath before. I say it when I go and talk to recruit classes, fire academy recruit classes. I always tell them that when the tone goes off and you feel yourself surge, that adrenaline surge in your body, and you get your gear on and you get into the rig, take a deep breath. Just breathing, it's amazing how just breathing and taking a deep breath will begin to calm you down. And what it also does is, as it calms you down, it opens up your view. Because as responders, we tend to get the blinders on as soon as we go into that stress. With taking that deep breath, we start to open up our view, and maybe we see something that could be a danger. Maybe we see something that somebody else didn't see that could hurt or kill someone. So breathing, having a plan beforehand, recognizing what your coping mechanisms are going to be. Those are all things that, again, looking at emergencies that we deal with now, crisis that we deal now, family that we deal with now, whatever it might be, how we're going to cope with it.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
So moving on to this slide now then. I mean, this slide was kind of put together to try and address the different kinds of resiliency that people talk about. So a couple of years ago, I travelled across the US and Canada looking at models of mental health, resiliency and different things. And everybody had their own take on exactly what resiliency was. Some people say, well, you learn resiliency on the job, which is kind of true. People said, well, we've got resiliency in the fact that we've got all these fantastic mental health programs in place, which is great. But actually, one thing I did learn is that resiliency is the whole package, and when we look at resiliency, it kind of starts at the very beginning, like Mike's saying. It starts at pre-employment. You're talking to new recruits about taking a deep breath, the simple resiliency, looking at yourself, building that toolbox from the day one when you start. And, it kind of goes on. One of the most important things on the education bracket I found was pre-retirement awareness. And that was actually really important as well. Very, very important. Because, I came up with a name for it, and it was career bereavement. I kind of made it up. I made it sound worse than it probably was, to be honest with you. But what I was trying to get at with that is, one day you're working, you're in the job. I'm Dan, paramedic, got a lovely uniform, nice little crown on it. And I finish on the Friday. My colleagues throw me a big party. It's great. Spend the weekend probably recovering. And then Monday morning, I wake up. Who am I now? I don't have the uniform. I'm no longer Dan, the paramedic. I'm just Dan. And that pre-retirement awareness is really important. So the whole education around resilience is really important. Resilience through experience is incredibly important as well. I think that's an incredibly important aspect. And actually, sometimes we do need the little knocks and the bad experiences to help us build our experience up. And that, some people would agree, some people wouldn't, but it does form an important part of helping us to develop. I have personally suffered with seen some really horrendous things that have made me really bad and have to reach out for help and support. And, I'm not ashamed to say I took counselling to help me with that. But what that actually did was made me a stronger person, much more resilient, much more aware of my feelings. And actually it made me feel stronger to be able to deal with my day-to-day role as a paramedic. And of course, support networks, we've discussed heavily, but do form such an important part of resiliency.
Yeah, Dan, you brought up a great point when it comes to guys, I shouldn't say guys, but people that retire from the career service, public service. One of the biggest things is I think FDNY's peer support model is a great tool or a great use of retirees. Their peer support team is actually built and manned on a regular basis by retirees. A lot of their peers that they have are retired firefighters that go out, they go to the firehouses, they sit down, they have that cup of coffee, they, say, hey, listen, you guys had a bad fire the other day, it was crazy. They just have general conversations, and it's almost like they're using these retirees that, you went from a life of, look at how busy I am, and it's work, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, what am I going to do today? This is boring. I can't sit here. I can't just do nothing. And they put them to work in going out, still being involved in the fire service, still being involved with FDNY EMS, and they're out there and they're really providing a great service that, like Dan, you said, you've had experiences, you've gone through stuff, and now it's your turn, now that you're not going on those calls, to maybe help out a little bit and help people recognize how you've recovered, how you've helped yourself, helped other people, how you've seen people, recover. So that's a great use of responders. I'm trying to do something in New Jersey for the PFA&J using the same model. Retired firefighters that could just go out and just be that ear. And then when we do need to go in someplace, they pick up the phone and say, listen, I think somebody really should take a ride over and maybe do some type of debriefing or some type of program for this department. And it's just a great tool.
Mike and Dan brought up a good thing here about the peer-to-peer support and retirement. As a retired law enforcement, I'm glad that we have Roy Diaz with us today, who's also retired, and that peer-to-peer program. So, Roy, we talk all the time, Roy, and our goals at retirement were to be the Walmart greeter and just say welcome to the store and not have any responsibilities. But I know you say it best when you say if your plans are retirement, make sure that shit's in pencil because it changes, right? So I'm going to turn it over to you because I think this is what we're talking about is peer-to-peer and retired and how that works and how good it is.
Thank you for letting me be a part of this. I think it's very important. And from what I've already heard, you know, it's what we do at Cop to Cop every day. Cop to Cop was legislated by law back in 1999, and we went live in year 2000. So if you do the math, simple math, we've been around for 20 years. 20 years we've been doing this. And I'm proud to say that I've been part of the Cop to Cop program for almost 13 years, 12 and a half years. I retired in 2007. I retired as a detective lieutenant from the Union County Prosecutor's Office, and I had a little bit more than 31 years on the job. And I've had my issues over the years. A lot of times, a lot of it I suppressed. But at Cop to Cop, it's like what Mike said as far as the firemen and NYPD. It's the law says that Cop to Cop has to have personnel who are retired cops. You can't do nothing for us unless you're a retired cop. Each and every one of us are retired, and we have ranks from patrolman all the way up to chief. Now, personally, I started my career in corrections. So if a correctional officer calls in, I could offer peer support as a correctional officer. I was a patrolman. I could offer peer support for patrolmen. I went to the prosecutor's office as a detective and rose up to the rank as lieutenant, and I could continue to help investigators that way. Not that I can't talk to a captain or to a chief like Ed. We can, because all of us started off as cops. I want to mention the fact that since we've been so successful, and I'm thinking about the programs who have spun off from us. We have a line called the Mom to Mom line, which is a line that's staffed by moms who have special needs children. We have a line that's Care to Caregivers line. That's a line who are caregivers to their loved ones who have Alzheimer's or dementia. We have a Vet for Warriors line. We have a Child and Protective Service line for DIFAS, well, we used to call them DIFAS. Corrections line. We have a Resiliency Officer line. Foster Parents line. And teachers have a line. The Vet for Warrior, again, the Vet for Vets, which is a New Jersey baseline. There's a drug line to get people into rehabs. So that's all been because Cop to Cop has been successful. We work under the HIPAA law. So when you call us up, it's a mental health issue, and we're not required to disclose your mental health to someone. We will disclose and try to get some help for you if you do tell us that you're suicidal. Doesn't mean that we're going to call your police department or call the AG's office or call anyone other than a mental health person to help you out. The other one is if you're homicidal, we have to disclose that. If you're planning on killing somebody, we have to do that. And if you admit to being a child molester, we have to report that. Other than that, I make a joke about it. I worked in narcotics for almost 14 years, and I've seen a lot of drug seizures and money seizures. And I make a joke about it that if you seize $30,000 of drug money, I want half of it, and everything is going to be fine. But no, I just make a joke of that. We don't do that. We don't condone, criminality. But we don't want you to continue that behavior. And with that said, we've partnered up with the AG's office with his resiliency program. And what that is a resiliency program is a local person at the police department that one cop could talk to his resiliency officer. Now, the caveat with that is that the resiliency officer has to advise him that he could talk to that person about anything as long as it's not a criminal matter, because he's still active duty. I'm not active duty. I'm not required to report that. But an active police officer who's a resiliency officer in that department has to report that. So they've been trained, and they know that if it gets to that point, that they have to kick it up to cop. And that's a good partnership. Resiliency, the resiliency program in New Jersey is fairly new, but it is working. It is working. We talk to these resiliency officers all the time. Now, our line is just not a line for cops. It's also a line for the families. Anyone in that household could give us a call, because you know what? Sometimes cops can be a little bit difficult, and we come home and we bring our problems to our 17-year-old daughter or 17-year-old kid, and they're bothered by it. They could call us too. If they could dial, they could call us, and we help them out. And again, everything is confidential. If you have marital issues, depression, anxiety, whatever you have on your plate, we could talk you through it. And I forgot to mention that some of I'm not a clinician, but some of the cops at Cop to Cop are clinicians. So if you need that professional peer support help, you have a clinician, a cop clinician, who's willing to talk to you. There's a misperception out there that Cop to Cop, you could only call Cop to Cop if you're suicidal. We're not a suicide line, we're a helpline. But if you are suicidal, believe me, we're gonna help you. And Ed knows that, Ed knows my story, and maybe some of you guys know my story. I take suicide very serious, and I would think everyone else takes suicide very serious. I was at the, I guess the bad end of the gun, in my life during my career as a police officer, and luckily I did not pull the trigger. So when I disclosed that, as Mike was talking about, you know, telling you personal stories, once I quote unquote came out of the closet several years ago, you'd be surprised how many times after my presentation that people would talk to me a little bit about that, or that they have been there. For an example, today I was on the Cop to Cop line, and I had a phone call, and that person didn't disclose that they were suicidal until I mentioned that I was suicidal at one point. And then that person opened up and says, you know what, I was. Because they're afraid, you know, just like I was afraid for a long, long time. So opening up yourself and being honest and sharing your life with, you know, as long as you're comfortable with it, sharing your life with your peer just opens up a door and makes that person feel relaxed. And I guess knowing that you have gone through what they've gone through, and you kind of take some of the weight off their shoulders. I mentioned that we work under the HIPAA law. We're not required to call the AG's office or anything like that. Again, we offer peer support. We have about 150 people, providers in our system. And those providers are clinical social workers, psychiatrists, licensed, you know, counselors, marriage counselors, and they're trained by us. We let them know that cops are different, wired differently. We're going to come in there with an attitude. We're probably going to come in there with the gun unless they took it away from us. And we're just going to be cops. And we let them know, we educate them that, you know, this is how we are. So we have about, again, 150 or so providers. I've mentioned to you about all of our sister lines. We man our lines from 8 o'clock in the morning to midnight. And then after that, it goes into a line called New Jersey Hope Line, which is New Jersey's suicide line. And if you're suicidal, obviously they do this all the time, and they will help you out. If it's a non-emergency, we will call you the next business day. I'm proud of Cop to Cop. We have a good reputation, and Roy Diaz has been part of that reputation for 12 years. And I'm really proud that Ed asked me to come I don't know, Ed. I don't think I've ever turned you down, maybe once or twice or something like that. Maybe once I was sick, and another time I don't know what it was. But I love doing these CIT classes. They help so much. And when I see jobs around the state, and I see that the participants de-escalated something because of the help with the CIT program, I'm proud of that. And I'm proud of the fact that, people call the line and they recognize me and I'm able to help them. So this is a great resources for everyone that's listening to my voice right now. The Cop to Cop is out there for you. I mean, we're out there for 24 hours a day. We're all retired cops, and our number is 1-866-267-2267. 1-866-267-2267. Thank you for letting me be a part of this. It's a great program, and I just can't say enough for what you guys are doing. Thank you.
Roy, I want to say thank you. I don't think you ever really turned me down. I think you even showed up when you were sick. So
I did once. I remember that. Yeah.
But I also want to say that you bring a good aspect to the class on allowing, in the CIT classes, also allowing the mental health folks and our other folks, responders of other agencies, from school resources to all kinds of stuff, and teachers, just to see what a aspect of 30 years, 25 years, and how we get through it. And you bring a different perspective, which is excellent, and I thank you, buddy.
It's a little bit more colorful in person, though, right, Ed?
Yeah, well, we can't wait till COVID's over. All of us, I think.
Thank you, Ed. I appreciate that. I really do. Thank you.
Roy, I have had the pleasure of being in one of those classes and watching the first responders really kind of calm a little bit and really see that they can be vulnerable, they can ask for help, and that they didn't seem to completely believe that until they heard you talk. And I think that just feeds into this, peer resource piece that Mike was talking about. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, Carol. I want to mention, since you mentioned that, as my class, there are civilians there, and I don't turn down the civilian either. Their lives are just as important to me as my police officer, as their lives are. The call that I made reference to today, that person was from out of state, and I didn't turn that person down. I was on the computer trying to find resources for that person, and I told them about my personal issues, and we're going to continue to talk. A life is a life, and that's where I'm coming from, and that's where basically Cop to Cop is coming from. Regardless of whether you're from Jersey or anywhere in the country. And we get calls from all over. So thank you again.
Yeah, I have to say that, Cop to Cop has certainly been a godsend to me with my peer support programs. I know I've talked to Roy once or twice on the phone, yeah. Because they have an extensive database of counselors out there, therapists and psychologists who have worked with police, fire, and military. And one of the hardest things has been they signed a bill to get a fire line, fire EMS line, but it's nowhere right now. But getting my members who call me, or people who call me, the assistance that they need outside of peer support, Cop to Cop has been just phenomenal in helping me link people together with resources that are in their neighborhood. Because one of the problems that I always find is that, if I talk to somebody, I can get them so far. And then once they say, I think I really want to go talk to somebody, it's okay. Where do I find somebody? Well, Cop to Cop is that link. And you've given me those names and numbers, and making it easy for the responders that works in the northern New Jersey, but they live in southern New Jersey or central New Jersey, that I can call Cop to Cop and get the name of somebody close to their house so that they don't have to travel all the way up here, is huge, because it means that they're going to go get the help that they need, that they're not just going to say, you know what, coming all the way back up here just to go talk to somebody, you really can't do that. And if I can give you somebody, if you live in Ocean County and I can give you somebody in Ocean County, that is phenomenal, because it means that they're more likely to go get the help that they need.
You're so right, Mike. You really are. And a lot of times I'll I'll even make the call and find out when I could, you know, even I'll make the appointment for them, because just calling in and of itself stresses them out. And if I could relieve some of that stress, then that's what I'm going to do. I'm retired. I could do that.
Real quick, I don't want to leave our party out from across the pond there, Dan. So I know you were here touring and heard about our Cop to Cop program and stuff like that. And there might be people from England on this webinar. Anything that from the Cop to Cop sort of program over the other side of the pond?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'll just like to say, right, it's incredible work, and absolutely love to be able to mirror something like that over here. Be the dream come true if we could ever achieve something like that. I know we're probably running a little bit low on time, so I'll keep this quick. But just with reference to all the things we've discussed in the UK, the Royal Foundation have put together a website called mentalhealthatwork.org.uk. That's mentalhealthatwork, all spelled out, .org.uk. And it's a really good list of all the wellbeing tools that are available in the UK. It may not translate 100% across to people in the US, but there may be bits and pieces that you can take when we're talking about resources and things that you might be able to use to add to your toolbox as an individual or your toolbox as an organisation. So do please look that up. They've put a lot of time and work in combining all the resources together there. Yeah, I'm conscious of the time, so over to Vicky, I imagine.
So one of the things that we did want to highlight as other resources, and I think what we're finding with all this fabulous conversation, and I don't think we'll be able to get to all of the great comments even in the chat today, but it's really showing that potentially we do need that additional potential webinar, because we have so many additional resources we want to make sure that folks know about and share. But one that we did want to share today, Ruth, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yeah, but go ahead, Carolyn. You know it as well as any of us. And this has been amazing. So thank you so much. But you go for it, Carolyn.
Oh, absolutely. So during COVID, FEMA always brings about a crisis counseling program. And so we want to make sure that folks have this for anybody and everybody who might need some additional emotional support. It is free. It is 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 7 days a week. You can call in 866-202-HELP. There is also the ability to text, so you can text NJ Hope to 51684. And we really encourage folks to take advantage of this because it's another free resource. There's multilingual services available, and you know, as we were talking even before we let everyone in today, COVID is probably going to be here for a little bit longer, and so we really know that everybody is going to need some additional support. So we wanted to make sure that this was available. Anything, Ruth, you want to add?
No, great. Absolutely. Feel free to call or text the line and give this to your friends and family and coworkers, and we're here for you. Thank you so much. Thanks, Carolyn.
Thank you. And I will hand it off to Miss Vicky. So we leave everyone to end on time and hopefully wanting some more.
Great. I'm just trying to look at some of the things that we've gone through in the chat. Jacqueline said the Family Support Organization of Essex County has a virtual support network for parents, and it's free. We have wellness sessions and group talk with a clinical psych, and she put the link in the chat for that. Thank you, Jacqueline. Anybody have any questions, comments? I know that this has been a wonderful time to get together and talk about all the different things that people are seeing. Mike, again, thank you. Dan, Roy, it was great to have you today. Ed, anything you'd like to add? Anything anybody else, any of you three would like to add?
Real quick before we leave, CIT, and this is what I mean by this, is CIT everybody that's here, if you need or want something blasted out, please email me and I'll attach it to any resource and send it through our social media. I like to say, I'll indulge anybody with any information. Maybe that one thing doesn't work for them. Maybe there's another person that works for them. Just like a clinician, you want to find the right doctor or the right resource or program for you. So it doesn't matter to me if you're, what silo you're in. CIT is to bring all those silos together, and here's the resources. And like Roy and everybody said, we're trying to save a life or help somebody get out of a crisis. So no matter what agency you are from, I just welcome you to the CIT family, and we'll blast anything out. So please reach out to me if you want me to send something, post something. Doesn't take that long. I'll put it on our Facebook, and you'd be surprised how many phone calls I'll get later or a letter I'll get later that it was from another agency. I referred it to somebody else, and thank you, I got it from here. So you're supporting everybody that is doing and on here. Keep doing what you're doing, and we'll get the word across the United States and across the pond. And maybe Roy, we can go visit, Dan over there in England and tell him about come up with a creative phone number for England cop to cop or something. Bobby to Bobby.
Bobby to Bobby.
Would love to.
Hey, I'm in on that trip. So I just wanted to also comment that I put in the chat box that the link for the past 2 sessions. If you missed those, please go back and check them out. And thank you all for attending today. Any final words, Dan, Mike?
I would just like to say thank you all very much for your time. I think what we've achieved over the last 3 episodes has been kind of the building blocks for personal well-being, institutional well-being at the scale of the employment side. But I think one thing that we've actually learned is that we all have a passion for mental health, for well-being. And actually, when we get this right, mental health, well-being can actually be a really fun and exciting conversation. It's not actually all cloak and dagger, a conversation that needs to be kept hush-hush. It's a really exciting thing. And when we talk about it and when we get this right, believe me, it's life-changing, and it can make a much happier and better place for us all to live in. So please, please keep it up.
Yeah, definitely. I would say to everybody, go out there, look at the programs that you have available to you, depending on where you are. If you're in New Jersey and you're interested in some resiliency training, I definitely would reach out to the state UASI program. They're working with Natal, and they actually deliver the training, the train-the-trainer programs as well for police, fire, and EMS. It's just one of the programs. There's many that are out there. That's one of the ones that I had worked with, and just definitely look for your access to peer support programs, and also look for some type of resiliency training. There's some great stuff out there.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you all so much for coming. And we're right a couple minutes after 3, but hopefully you got something out of today, and you can reach out and connect with any of us through the website. And have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Vicki. Thank you, Carolyn.